The race is on, isn't it, in the United States ahead of that 2024 election as the debt ceiling crisis intensifies. Joining me live from the US is Peter Matthews, Professor of Political Science at Cypress College. Well, there he is, Ron DeSantis. He's on the road, Peter.
He sure is, Tim, and I'll tell you something. This is going to be a very interesting race. Despite the fact that Donald Trump at this point has 50% of the votes on the Republican side and DeSantis about 25, 22%, it's still going to be very close in the end. And I believe that many Republicans are looking to replace Trump as the party nominee because they feel he'll have a more credible appearance in the fall in November. And DeSantis has his own hurdles to climb. But on the other hand, there is this alternative to Trump. On the other hand, Trump himself is very popular among the activists in the Republican Party, the MAGA people. So it all depends on the intensity of each side and who's going to get out to vote.
He certainly had that white knight feel, didn't he, Ron DeSantis, when he hit the scene? And I think everyone thought for a while that he would just be, a lay-down misere to be the Republican candidate. Things have changed. He's had some dramas over the past few months.
He certainly has, and that's kind of what set him back a bit more. And one of the big dramas was with Disney, when he decided to go after Disney and, to punish them for their position on the Don't Say Gay bill, which he got passed in Florida, and this became a culture war. And the epitome of the culture war was at this very apex between Disney and the governors. So that's a tough one. And there are a lot of people that like Disney. They love Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and the entertainment, and he's picking on a very tough opponent. So that, and then a few other things that he came up with, which set him back a bit, and he's still trying to scramble to get going once again.
Talking of drama, Donald Trump has his own dramas, of course, plenty legal dramas going on, including a judge saying that next year, right in the middle of, the hot time of 2024, that he needs to present himself to court.
It's amazing. A former president running for re-nomination, re-election, will be in court at the beginning of the primaries, right when the primary is going on. I think it might even be the South Carolina primary, one of those primaries that are very important. He'll be in court instead. It's unbelievable. And so if I had to choose between being Ron DeSantis or being Donald Trump, I'd much rather be Ron DeSantis in March of 2024, not in court. And this can really hurt him in a lot of ways. He's got other cases coming up against him as well. It takes a lot of energy and focus away. He thinks he can rally his base based on these accusations by the prosecutors. But I think that's going to be very tough to get beyond his base. He might win the nomination, but he will not win the general election, that's for sure.
I was watching the documentary, the Nancy Pelosi documentary put together by her daughter during the week, and there was extensive vision, as you'd imagine, of what happened on January 6th. And if you just sort of stepped to one side and got out of the politics and where you stood and just looked at it and thought to the idea that Donald Trump is running again, it's hard to believe.
It's unbelievable, because here's a person who has been accused of, and there's quite a bit of evidence that he actually started the insurrection. He incited the insurrection on the January 6th insurrectionists, and that is completely unconstitutional. It's unethical, immoral. It doesn't even jive with American politics. We believe in peaceful change and transitions. Here's a man who did these things, and he's going to be on trial for that pretty soon. And yet he is seen as the front runner in terms of the polling in the Republican primary. So it's very amazing that this is happening, and we'll see what happens between now and the beginning of the primaries, the beginning of the year. Things could change as well, because there are some other cases that he has to face down, and the insurrection is one of the biggest ones, as well as the case of the documents, the top secret documents that he held on to, despite apparently after the FBI asked him to turn them in, and so did the archives. So we'll have to see. He's facing a lot of obstacles in that sense.
Joe Biden is back in the United States after the G-7 summit in Japan, and nations have agreed on a united approach to China.
Yes, they have, and they've agreed to not decouple with China, but to do something like accommodated, but still speak up for our own values, and don't break away with China in terms of economic relations. That's so important that the U.S. and the West and Australia and other countries in the Western Alliance, the G7, actually continue productive economic relations with China, because these are the world's largest economies, the U.S. and China, and the supply chains and all those kinds of connections in the economic side, if it's disrupted by any major confrontation between the two sides, will be terribly downsided for the entire world, actually. And I think the G7 is going to be very serious. It's more optimistic in terms of the way they put it this time around. They don't want to start an economic war with China, but they also want to make sure they stand up for their own rights, their own protection of their own economic development and their rights and needs. So that's going to be a very interesting balancing act. I think G7 did quite well. I hope that China will also come along now and we can settle this problem in the world with the two major economic blocs that have to be settled so the world can continue developing. And countries in the global south especially need money, they need food, they need investment from both sides. So we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely. Now, domestically in the US, time's running out for negotiations over the debt ceiling. Absolutely, Tim. We're less than a week away now from the hard deadline that the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said is June the 1st, coming up in about 6 days. And she said, if we don't get that ready to pay our bills on that day, if we default, it'll be a humongous effect in the United States economy and even the world economy. And I'm sure countries like Japan and China, to whom the U.S. owes about $2 trillion collectively, they're also worried about getting paid and getting at least the payments being made on time. This is going to have a major effect on the dollar, on the interest rates for the American people, and how it'll skyrocket. Wall Street could come down crashing to a large extent. There have been a lot of experts saying these things are bound to happen unless we get it together. And these two sides have to come together. It looks fairly good right now, but I'm not so convinced that it's going to happen. I really hope it does. But we'll see how it goes. And last minute, you never know what could happen. And already there's warning from some of the rating agencies that they're going to put the United States on a watch, a credit rating watch. That's not good. That's the beginning of something that could be a lot worse unless we get this together and settle this dispute and come down with a plan. Yeah, fascinating days. They really are. Peter, we'll chat real soon.
Okay, Tim. Thank you.